My next guest, the president of Balanced Energy Texas, and you just heard Texas State Senator Charles Perry say some very nice things about our next guest, Mike Nasi. Mr. Nasi, welcome back to the show. How are you?
It's great to be on. I'm great.
Great. Thanks for coming on today. You are, of course, president of Balanced Energy Texas and someone who knows a lot about the EPA and also a lot about Scott Pruitt, who looks to be the next head of the EPA under President Trump. First, tell our audience a little bit about Balanced Energy Texas, and then also what you believe the EPA will look like under a President Trump.
Great. Well, Balanced Energy for Texas is a group that got pulled together a few years ago to help remind the federal government how important energy is to the success story that has been Texas. And part of that has been pointing out the way that the Texas government, as opposed to the federal government, has managed regulating the environment to protect Texans quite effectively without necessarily shutting down fossil fuel industries that are so critical to economic growth. So Balanced Energy was just devised to try to help communicate facts that already existed. Balanced Energy has been involved in some litigation, but primarily it is a outreach effort, not a litigation effort. But in that context, to transition to your second question, in the work that I do, I'm an environmental regulatory lawyer, and I primarily like to build projects, but over the last 8 years, unfortunately, we've had to spend a lot more time in the courthouse than we have been able to in building things because of the administration's focus on attacking fossil fuels. So I had the honor of being involved in several cases where the state of Oklahoma, represented by General Pruitt, the EPA administrator nominee, was co-counsel. So I had the honor to get to know General Pruitt in that context and have actually been with him on panel discussions of what we might do to fix this. So that hypothetical has turned into reality, thankfully, as we look forward to the next 4 years.
So I assume that those who are in the energy field can look forward to maybe a more pro-energy government than one who just wanted to shut down projects, correct?
Right, and I think what I tell everyone that I speak to across the country about this issue, the first thing to recognize is that I don't think any of the successful states in our nation do not believe in environmental regulatory protection. Texas has been a leader in that area, as have some other very productive states. So one of the first issues that needs to get corrected is just the role of the states. The Constitution and the deal that was brokered by Congress when they passed most of the environmental statutes back in the late 60s, early 70s, was that the states largely had their own programs already. Texas had a Clean Air Act before the federal government did. And so what was done by Congress back then is they created this model, Chad, called cooperative federalism, where the federal government would have oversight, but the states would do the day-to-day business because it really is the states that know the regional variations, the site-specific variations, their populations, their economies. They do a good job of being more in tune and have better resources to run those programs effectively. And there's one statistic that I know General Pruitt is focused on, and I remind everyone, that just blows people's mind, that shows how different the last 8 years has been than anything we've ever seen. And that is that, the most dramatic thing that the federal government can do in the environmental arena to try to impose its will on a state is issue what's called a Federal Implementation Plan, or a FIP. Environmental law has a lot of acronyms, but FIP is the scariest. That's where the federal government literally runs a program.
Mike, hang on 1 second. All right, back on the Chad Easty Show, News Talk KFYO. We're joined by Mike Nasi, president of Balanced Energy of Texas. Mike, apologize for that break. Once the computer starts rolling, we can't even stop it. So we appreciate
no problem.
We appreciate you holding through the break, and we want you to get in that the information about the EPA and how it's going to be changing under not only General Scott Pruitt but also President Trump.
Yeah, you bet. And what I was getting into was one of the biggest changes that needs to happen that I know is important to the new administration and certainly General Pruitt is the leadership role that states should be allowed to play on environmental and energy issues. In the last 8 years, the federal government has taken over programs in an unprecedented rate. Specifically, they've issued 56 direct federal takeovers, which are called federal implementation plans under the law. And just to give you some context, over the prior 20 years, spanning 3 administrations, there had been a total of 5. And during the 8 years of the Clinton administration, that action was only taken once. So just right there, you can tell that something dramatically different happened in the last 8 years that can be quickly corrected by the new administration simply acknowledging the leadership role that states have and should continue to play when it comes to protecting our environment and still allowing energy resources to be developed.
What does the future of energy in Texas specifically look like?
Well, it's very bright. I mean, we have so many great resources in Texas, and I include agriculture across energy discussions because, frankly, EPA is just as bad to agriculture potentially as energy. So if EPA does its job right under a new administration approach, ag is going to fare better, but certainly oil, natural gas. A lot of people don't know this, but we have a lot of coal in Texas that gets mined and used in Texas coal power plants. We have nuclear power plants. We also have renewable resources. Obviously, folks in Lubbock are not foreign to windmills. So, the president, the current President Obama, liked to say all of the above, but all too often he seemed to be meaning all of the above ground. He didn't. His policies, both in energy and environment, were openly hostile toward fossil resources that we get from below the ground, whether that be oil, gas, or coal. The new administration is going to show, I think, everyone what a real all-of-the-above strategy looks like.
Visiting with Mike Nasi, president of Balanced Energy Texas. Mike, how can people get more information about your organization?
You bet. BalancedEnergyTexas.org always has good information about a number of different energy resources. Focuses primarily on electricity, but lots of good info there, and there's a Twitter account as well if you want to follow along those tweets.
Great. Mike, appreciate your time today, and hopefully we'll see some better results out of this administration or the next administration than the current one.
You bet. It's an exciting time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.